right, we're gonna get study hall started here pretty soon. Let me just pull everything up on my phone here. Pull the Slack thread up so I can see what's going on in Slack. All right. Looks like we're good. One more thing. That's better. Now I feel better. Ready to stream. All right, folks, welcome to Study Hall. Feel free to post your questions if you have any questions from Learn or from any other place on the web. Any Python beginner or intermediate Python questions are all welcome here. Feel free to just bring them in. Your question can take whatever form it needs to. Just if it's a question from Learn or somewhere on the internet, just send in a link. There's this thing that happens, which it's fine if it happens, and if it's I don't want to like put anybody on the spot or like shame anybody if this happens, but a lot of times I just want to make it known that that this happens. So a lot of times people will send me a question, they'll say, hey, can you troubleshoot my code? And they'll send me code, and if it doesn't have a problem statement, which is just a statement of like a problem to solve and an intended solution, then I can't very well, if I don't know what it's supposed to do, then I don't know how to troubleshoot it, right? All I can do is validate it, just make sure that it's valid Python or whatever. But if it's already, a lot of errors occur when a lot of errors occur at runtime. They're called runtime errors, where the code is valid and that it works. It just isn't doing what it's intended to do. So just bear that in mind when you're asking a question. Help. Just give me something so that I know what the code is intended to do, and then I can help you make it do that. So just send me a link, send me any code if you have code, or you can just send me a link, say, hey, I'm struggling with this, would you show a solution and talk about it? Or if there's a concept you want me to cover, feel free to mention it and I'll do my best to go through it. Also, I know things come up in premium prep that are sort of side topics, and I try to like get a little bit into those just to kind of keep the interest flowing, and keep things, kind of satisfy some curiosities around that stuff. But often we don't have time to really dive that deeply into things in class during premium prep lectures. So if there's a topic that comes up in a premium prep that you want me to talk about, this is a great venue for that. And that's what this is intended for. Getting a lot of people posting, saying hi, leaving an emoji. Hey, everybody. Thanks for dropping by. So yeah, hopefully everybody's clear on that. So that is, just to be clear, that's all the primary purpose of study hall. That's what this is for, is to give you a venue to kind of ask questions and have a bit of a public forum for this, where we can just chat and go over questions together. Since I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, we got a couple choices. I could either go through the material or go through Code Wars, and I've been kind of waffling back and forth on this all day. But since I've got the Learn material in front of me, I think maybe I'll just do that instead. Okay. So do feel free. I'm going to go through this material. We're on comments. We're kind of really early in the materials here, which I think is fine. But feel free to interrupt me if you have a question. Just say like, "Hey, I have a question." Just throw it in there. Whatever you want to do. No need to be shy is all I'm saying. Cool. And what is 1 second here? Let's see. That's interesting. 1 second. Let me see. Okay, that's what's happening there. Okay, sorry about that. So let's just jump into something. So this is the section on comments. And I believe I just went through this last time and I didn't really get through the challenges. So just as a very, very quick reminder, there are two types of comments in Python. There are single and multi-line comments. I actually have these little switches which will turn on and off blocks of code. So all right, so if I run this, oops. If I run this and let's say I have some lines of code, however many lines of code, obviously 2 is not that many, but maybe let's give a better example here. So let's say I've got these, some code, some functions that I wrote together, and I want to comment them all out. I have these comment switches that I use. So if you're watching me code and you're wondering what these weird bars are, part of it's to help visually kind of keep a separation between topics. While I stream or while I lecture, I will tend to like move from example to example, and I want to kind of keep a record of what I'm doing. So I like this system for that. This is a system that I use just for my own studying when I was before I was a Python teacher. I was a Python learner and a programming student. I would do this. I would explore a concept and then just put it in one of these little comment sections, comment the whole thing out. And then if I ever wanted to come back to it, I just literally share my notes document. So this is my notes document, my current notes document. We can see we're at about almost 4,000 lines of code here. So this one's about halfway through its life cycle before I'm going to retire it. I've got a few dozen of these at this point. So you can just look here, all these random examples, and probably these are random examples that you've seen me do in study halls and things like that, because that's where I put everything after I'm done with it. But yeah, so let's say here's this thing, sort vowels, so I can come here and say, what was I doing here? And I can look at this function that I wrote. I can play around with it, run it. I have these tests for it, whatever. And then once I'm done with it again, I can just comment it back out and move on. Ooh. So those little comment blocks, those comment sections, oops. I see, that was that, okay. Those actually use a single line and multi-line comments together. So you can see our single line comment is just everything to the right of a hash mark. So I can comment out a whole line, or I can comment out the right part of a line. So if I said print hello, I could take a note. I could make a comment on that line. It says displays hello to the console. So this is something that I like to do. If there's a little line you want to take a note on, just explain what it does or why it does it or why you chose to write it that way or whatever. You could just leave a little note in line like that. There's no way to leave a comment like in the middle of a line and then pick the line back up. So it's either the whole line is commented out or some rightmost portion of the line is commented out. So everything to the right of the hash is commented out. So that's a single line comment. And then multi-line comments we either use triple single tick quotes, two sets. Let's be clear about this. Two sets, matching sets of triple single tick quotes, or same thing, 2 sets of matching double tick quotes. Oops. I think I did one too many. There we go. And you can see I'm using triple double ticks for these. So if I go, you got to be a little careful, because if this was a comment in here, that would inadvertently turn that on. So I just have to remember, if I'm using a multi-line comment in here, since I'm using triple ticks, I have to use single ticks, or excuse me, triple double ticks for my comment blocks. I have to use triple single ticks for any multi-line comments in here, which I think that's fairly standard for doc strings, so that's why I use the triple double ticks for my comment blocks. But you can do whatever you like. That's single and multi-line comments for you, though. Let's just knock these out real quick, and then I see we have a question, and I'll get right to that. So how should you not use comments? So these are just some quick kind of refresher on what this covered up here. We use comments actually to provide function documentation. So this is good to go. To describe each line of code for future readers of your Python script. I'll read the others here. To briefly explain why you made a particular algorithmic choice. Now that's a good use for comments. To disambiguate a particularly dense line of code. So it's this one. You may be coming from a different language. You may have experience maybe in a language. If you worked in a programming language a long time ago. Oops, I didn't mean to change the size of that. There's some languages where the convention in writing that language is to document every line or close to it. I've seen C code, for example, that has, like you'll look at a document that has like 300 lines in it, and like 200 lines are, it's like 200 lines of comments and a bunch of empty lines, like just spaces and stuff, which is fine. I think adding more space to your code is better than adding too little. But um, yeah, I've definitely seen C code that has more lines of comments and documentation than actual code. And in C, that makes sense. C is a pretty different language from Python, but Python is a more modern language, and it's what we call a self-documenting language, and that's a bit of a subjective term, but essentially what that means is that Python is designed to be readable. It's designed to be not only good as working as a computer language, right, where the computer can interpret it quickly and um, execute it, but it's also designed to be good as a human readable language, and that's one of Python's greatest strengths. Um, in fact, I would say I think I can't think of a language that I like more in that particular regard. There are other languages that attempt it and kind of do it differently, but I think Python just really gets it right as for being human readable, and that's one of the reasons we like it. One of the reasons we use it is because it's easy to work with. So you write your code, and this is one of the reasons that there's an emphasis on things being Pythonic. I don't agree with every canonically Pythonic thing or everything in PEP 8. I do deviate from PEP 8 in my own coding style, which is fine. What's important is that you're consistent, but you you do want to have a coding style that is consistent and that aids in that readability. So in general, most Python coding styles are oriented around writing code that is clear and that is self-documenting. And for the times when you can't get away from that, every now and again you're going to have to write a dense, weird line of code. You can add some more comments to say like, hey, this is why this is this way. This is why we chose to That's why I chose to lay things out like this. So it's more the exception, not the rule. So let's go with that one. Cool, printing. On to printing. Okay, we're gonna take this later. I'm gonna take this person's question. I have a question under the dictionary section about adding key value pairs, challenge 3, called dictionary keys. And a link is provided. Cool. All right, thank you for your question. I'm just gonna go in here. Okay. Number 3. Oops. Feel free if you have any code that you'd like me to look over. I know I already said that, but I'm really just saying it again as a reminder, just in case you wanted to. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But just wanted to be extra sure that you know that it's totally cool. All right, I think I'm gonna need this. I'll do this. So it's saying this should return this. So let's say, actually I'll do this. I'll say exp equals, so that's our expectation. This is our result. And then I'll do my little test here. I'll say print res equal to exp, and we'll print res again. This is the name of my function. So notice I haven't even read the problem statement yet, but I'm already setting myself up to be able to solve this problem quickly and easily. Okay, so I always like to have a test written. I noticed where it said this for example, it says this function call, which is the function that we'll be writing, presumably, should return this dictionary. So I notice we're going to be returning a dictionary. So I'm just going to return D, which is a good name for a dictionary, or it's a name that I consistently use for a dictionary. Maybe it's not objectively good, but it's what I like to do. So, okay, so we're returning that dictionary. Presumably, we're going to alter this in some way so that it actually has what we want inside of it. Okay, so this example here, I'm just going to turn that into a test, write my test, kind of stub out my function, write in my return just so I have that there. Let's just run this really quick. Make sure everything is all set up. Oh, no, I got to take in my input. Looks like this is going to take in text. And I'm just looking down here. I look down here and say, oh, it looks like it's taking in a string, so I'll put in some text. Okay, so this is running. It says false, and it's returning an empty dictionary. And that's what I want for now. I want to know that the way that I wrote my test here, that it can give me a false. That's a proof of my test, right? If the test doesn't fail when I know it should fail, then I wrote the test wrong. So since I know it fails when it should, it'll probably tell me that it's also succeeding when it should. Cool. So now, after all this, now I'll read the problem statement and go through it. Okay, so it says write a function called letteridx that will track the indices of whether, where the vowels occur in a string. This function should take a word or a sentence as an argument, so it's text, some form of text, be case sensitive. So this is really it's going to track the indices of where the vowels occur. So it's the indices of the vowels. So it'll return a dictionary with the keys representing the vowels that occurred in the sentence and the values representing the indices where that vowel occurs in the word or sentence. Okay. For this exercise, Y is considered a vowel. All right, so why don't I just make a, let's do this. Vowels. We'll say A, E, I, O, U. Okay. Then I'm going to say for I and let's do this for ch, which will be for character, and text. And then I'll say if the character dot lower. There's a number of different ways to do this. So if the character dot lower is a member, so I'll check for membership in vowels. We'll do this. Okay, yeah. I'll actually spell it out. So if the character, the lowercase version of the character is in vowels, then we will d sub character equals, and then what did we want the value to be? I think we wanted it to be a list, right? Let's just come down here and look. Yeah, so if I look at this, HE, so we have an E, and there is an E, and that E occurs at 1. So we have a 1 in there. It says we have an E at 1, 8, and 10. Let's just confirm that. 1, here's another one, and here's another one. So that seems like that could be 8 and 10. Let's just verify that. So index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oops. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, I forgot to count the space. 9, 10. Cool. And then we have an O at 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's that O. So that looks right. So I'm just going to start this with an empty list. There's a number of ways to do this. But I'm going to start it at an empty list like that. And then I'm going to say d sub ch dot append. We will append the index. I don't have the index yet, so why don't I make it? Numerate will enumerate. I'll say IDX like this, and that should do it. So let's see if we get a true signal here, and if our output matches key error H. Ooh. Aha. There we go. Let's see here. So I need to change this logic a little bit. I helped somebody earlier today with a sort of a similar dictionary problem, and I realized I kind of modeled that solution a little too heavily here. So I got this error, and I did get this error in earnest. This is a genuine mistake, and I want to frame it that way because I know you all are making probably a lot of mistakes. Um, I've been programming for a number of years now, and obviously I teach programming, right? And I still make mistakes. So I want to be clear about this. You're not going to stop making mistakes unless you're like a way smarter person than I am or something, which is possible. But you're not going to stop making mistakes. It's just a matter of like look at the error and check it out and adapt, right? So this says there's a key error H. So I look through my code and I think, right, of course there's a key error because regardless of whether this is a lowercase or not, I'm still asking to append to d sub ch. So I'm not actually adding it in under the right condition. But I think this is partly right. So I think what I want to do, I only want to do this, I only want to add in an empty list at d sub ch in this creation step. And here, I'll be clear about this. Let's be clear about what's going on here. So this is creating an empty list and a new, let me rephrase that, creating a new key with a value of empty list. And then this needs to be run after that creation step, modifying that list. Okay, so I think what I want to do here is if the character dot lower is a vowel, that's one condition that I want to do this stuff. But I think there's another condition. That other condition is if ch not in d dot keys. So if the character is not in the keys of the dictionary, then I want to create it and then append to it. And if it is in the keys of the dictionary, then that means at some prior stage I already did create it. So I don't need to create it again. If I created it again, I'd have a problem overriding the previous modifications that I've made to it. So I only want to create it the first time I encounter that character or that vowel. I only want to run this creation step that first time I encounter that vowel. And then the second time I append to it. So the first time I encountered this E, it's not in the dictionary keys, so I add it in. I add the key value pair in. And then the second time, I add it in and I append to it immediately after it's been added in. And then the second time I encounter it, I don't need to add it in again. I just append to it because it already exists. Okay, hopefully that was clear. I know that's a bit going on. I had a good weekend. I'm feeling all excited, and I hope I'm not going too fast or flying through things. If you have questions, feel free to stop me. Just let me know to rein it in a little bit. Cool. So I just ran it, and you can see we get a true. So this says the result that we got from the function is equal to the object that we expected to be returned. So you can see that that's true. So res equals exp is true. And then this is just showing me the result, just a visual, so I can visually verify, you know, is this actually what I wanted it to be? So yeah, looks like it's good. So let's submit this in, and I think I already have a solution here. Looks like I do. Oh, I think I took this one, perhaps I took this one, what, last time or recently? Nope, it did not work. Oh, I forgot to include Y. Okay. Remember that little note for this exercise? The letter Y is considered a vowel. I read that and I was like, I'll make my list or my string of vowels, and immediately forgot to add Y in it. So Y needs to be in there. And when we add it in there, then you can see it works again. So I don't technically need to do this vowels variable here. I could just actually put my vowels right in line like that, and you can see that's what I had with these other examples here as well. And then if we look up here, this is a prior solution, and I think it's exactly the same. Both of these are prior solutions. But yeah, empty dictionary, IDX and CH, enumerate text. I even called the same, all the same variable names. That's how consistent my code is. And then just a small stylistic difference here where I have this indented on the next line versus with this one I had it up on the same line like that, but it's the same code. Yeah. Let me know if that was helpful, if that answered your question. If it did not answer your question, or if you have further questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to explain further. I'm gonna give you a second to think about that. I'm just actually gonna go refill my water real quick. And we're back. Okay, cool. Good. Glad that was helpful. All right, let's move on. Let's see if there's any other good ones here. Looks like I got one of these wrong. I will not abide by it. Maybe I'll just do these other ones while I'm here. Okay. We're making a big jump from print to dictionaries. I feel like feel like people, at least I think everybody in here is in premium prep. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, I think people are probably set on print anyway. So okay, let's just go through this one. So fill in the empty dictionary below by completing the following steps. Add a key called name. The value should be your name. Add an age. Add a job. Okay, why is this one not working? Well, that one totally is working. I don't know why that one wasn't working. I was like, this is what I did there. Okay. Then let's see. Is this? Gosh, I'm wondering. Is this like? Am I in the wrong? Huh. Oh, I'm in basic prep. That makes sense. Okay. I usually work out of one of the premium prep cohorts, so I was looking at the progress here and I was like, wait, what's going on here? But that makes sense that this is basic prep. Okay, cool. Complete the function called add val to dict that takes two arguments. The first argument should be a dictionary. The second should be a tuple. So D and tup. Tuple containing a key as the first item and a value as the second. Okay, so basically we're going to take in what this is saying. I'll work out of my editor here. What this is saying is, see here, this is actually a great reason to write a test, because sometimes you might read something and it might be a little dense. But once you write a test, you sort of solidify, you have the opportunity to solidify your understanding. So let's do dict equals, we'll just do something simple, a 3 and let's say z 57, and then we'll say tup will be something we want to be the key, so let's just say C, and 22, oops, I am writing that like a key value pair. So something that we want to be the key and then something that we want to be the value. So I want to add this tup C22 into this dictionary here. So what I expect is a dictionary that contains it doesn't matter the order that I put these in. I'll put it here at the end, C22. So I want that the elements from this tuple to be a key value pair in the new dictionary. And then I'm going to say print, same line as before, res equals exp res. Okay, so I think we've got valid code. Let's just try everything out. We got a type error. Oh, right. Let's do this. There we go. False and none, that's what I expect because I haven't done anything here. It's not returning anything, so I should see none. And false because obviously I should see none, not the result that I'm looking for. So good to go. The test is good. So let's continue. What am I returning? I'm returning a dictionary, which is D1 in this case. Often what I like to do, not always, but often what I like to do, if I'm gonna modify, if I'm gonna take in a dictionary as an input, and I intend to do some operation that modifies that dictionary, I will copy it, but often, unless I need to iterate through another copy, I'll just overwrite the old name of the parameter with a copy like this, so d equals d dot copy. That way, everything below this line, like I don't have access to the original dictionary on purpose because I don't want access to it. I specifically want to block access to it um, because I'm going to modify it. So that way it doesn't modify the original. So in this case, we're going to say d equals d dot copy, and then I'll say d sub tup sub 0. Tup sub 0 is the first element of the tuple, which I want to be the key. And d sub tup sub 0 will equal tup sub 1. D sub tup sub 0 equals tup sub 1, gets tup sub 1. So let's try that out. So you can see I just ran my code, we get a true, and we get A, Z, C as keys, 3, 57, and 22. And then I'll actually just copy the whole function here. There we go. And when you're submitting it in Learn, of course, you don't need the tests. If you want to keep a record of them, though, you can do that, and then they'll stay and Learn. And if you know, you can come back and see how you tested it. I think usually that'll be fine. If you end up with problems, you might comment them out. But I think that'll work in all cases, actually. Cool. All right. Let's move on with printing. All right, so the floor is open again. If anybody's got questions, if you know, to the same person who asked a question before, if you've got another question, feel free to bring it in. And to anybody else who has a question, feel free to post it. Again, I'm not seeing any at the moment, so I'll just move on with the material right now. We're going to be talking about printing. We're going to be talking about a lot of the beginner stuff. Sorry about that. It is very hot and very dry where I am at. I'm just, I gotta get that water in me. Okay. Cool. So this section is on printing, and it's just the goal of it is to just that you're able to describe the use of the print function, describe and use the print function. So obviously you've seen me use print a lot. If you've seen me lecture or stream before, you've seen me use it a lot. And part of why I use it is for demonstration purposes. But I don't really use it that much less when I'm not, you know, like if I'm coding on my own, I'm spending time programming and doing my own project or just playing around and having fun doing my own coding. Like I print probably, I don't know, 90% as much as I do when I'm streaming or demonstrating code, um, because it's really useful. Like this is print is sort of my main tool for seeing what's going on with my code, so um, I mean printing and getting errors and things like that, so getting good at thinking about like, what if I saw this variable or this identifier at this specific line of code? Let me print that out and see what that is at this point. Um, and I think getting good at, I say getting good at it, but it's not like a, I think there's something there to be described as like a skill, but it's so simple. It's not really a matter of like getting good at like knowing when to print. It's just getting in the habit of it. It's more like that. Um, because knowing when to print is an easy answer. You should print all the time. You should print everything all the time. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen is you're going to get an error. If you get an error, then you still got useful information. Maybe it told you you can't print that thing or you can't do that or whatever, but now you know. Um, that helps you learn. The more errors you get, the more you build an understanding of how Python works and how everything is working that way. Somebody's asking, uh, they're saying, wait, did you not use a for loop for the tuple? Oh, for the previous question, I didn't loop through the tuple. So to the question that was posted previously, why don't I actually let's see. Oh wait, it wasn't this one. Gosh, I'm being silly. It was this one. Sorry about that. Here, let me just submit this. I'll be clear. I should always just put these in Slack after I'm done with them. And then I think this is the question you're asking about, which is that one. Let me know if that's the one you're looking for. So I didn't use the for loop for this to like iterate through this tuple. The reason is I know where I want these to go, like right off the bat, um, and like iterating through, since iterating through would kind of make sense if I added the key on one step and then added the value on the next step, but I can't actually do that because I can't. I have to add a key and a value at the same time. Um, even if there's like a pending operation to complete the adding of both, that's not possible. Python won't recognize that as valid, so I can't create a key without also adding a value. I suppose what I could do is um, add in a dummy value and then override it on the next step. But then I'm starting to get into like extra control flow. So let's just be clear about this. Let's do this. We'll say dd So if I did 4, I think I need to enumerate as well. And element in tup, I'd have to say if idx equals 0, I'd have to do one thing. So I'd have to say d sub tup sub 0 equals, and then like I said, like a dummy value, right? Because I can't have no value with the key, so I'd have to add that in. And then I could say else tup sub 0, d sub tup sub 0 equals tup sub 1. The problem with this is this line is the line that I had that solved the problem before, so I just literally don't need the rest of it. So yeah, I can't actually think of a way to do that with a for loop, even if it's more verbose, that doesn't actually just involve this or something that simplifies down to this. So yeah, I think that's essentially what we're looking at as a solution for this. Okay, so we have somebody asking about this, and that's cool. So I noticed you sent your code in unformatted. It's likely that it's not going to tab correctly for me. So if you use the triple backticks to submit formatted code, that can be helpful. But we'll see if this is gonna work. Oh, and you're on a 2-space indent, which is probably because that's what Replit starts you with. Okay, cool. So this is what I am seeing. Okay, so yeah, okay, so this makes sense. This would make sense like this. So if I did idx equals 0, and then you have dict2 sub tup1 sub idx, that's sub 0, equals tup1 sub idx plus 1, 0 plus 1 is 1, right? So that would make sense if you just had it like this, but the reason you're getting index out of range, you're enumerating the tuple, and then you go how do I put this? So IDX starts at 0, right? This tuple has only 2 indices, right? Index 0 and index 1. That's it, right? So tup sub 0 and tup sub 0 plus 1 are both valid because that's index 0 and index 1. Well, the next time we go through this loop, the second trip through this loop, index equals 1, which is fine here with tup sub index, but tup sub index plus 1 is 1 plus 1, which is index 2, and there's only 2 elements in this tuple, so you're going to get an index out of range on this second tuple subscription the second time through the loop, or the last time through the loop if there were more indices in there. You're also going to override, or you're going to add in 2, this is going to add in 2 elements. Even if it did work, I would add in a second element, so yeah. But I would look at this and I would simplify this down, basically like I did before, where you have this tup sub index, well that's just 0, and tup sub 0 plus 1 is 1. And then you end up with the same code that I had. Dict1, where is it? Oh, you're also going to get this error because you don't have a test with something called dict1. So we could do like D and let's just do D and T like that, and I'll say D equals dictionary A Z and we'll say T equals, oops, T equals a tuple of C 30, okay, so that's something too. So one thing I want to point out here, and I'm not sure that the way that this is written could be the result of a number of different things, but just to be clear, and I'm not sure if this is exactly the thinking behind this, just to be clear, the you don't have to pass in variables that have the same name as the parameters, right? So these are just the identifier names that are going to be used inside of the function. Dict1 and tup1, as you have them written here. These are just going to be used inside the function. Now, I could call this and then pass in dict1 and tup1 here. But in this case, it just happens that, like the fact that these have the same name here as the parameters here is a coincidence so far as a meaningless coincidence so far as Python is concerned. So yeah, cool. That was a good question though. So let me, sorry, there's a few more follow-ups to this. Is that the tuple has only 2 elements in it? Yeah. I didn't realize the tuple has only 2 elements. Yeah, that's a little bit weird. Yeah, it's always, I think that's why it's always helpful to like write out a test. Like even, oops, I got an error here because I totally put a colon in the tuple. Yeah. Okay, cool. Looks like we're good on this one. Thanks for the follow-up. Always happy to have questions. If I haven't made that clear. If I haven't said that a dozen times already. Okay, cool. I guess back on with printing, unless anybody else has another question. All right, so print, yeah, you've seen me use print a lot. It's great. It helps you see what's going on. I think one thing that I want to note with this is I think I see a lot of people that they want to like read through their code and like verify the correctness of the code and discern what it's going to do by eye. And that's, I mean, that's not like a skill that I would frown upon. It's not a bad thing. I think it's a thing that you develop over time, and I think you actually develop it by running your code a lot and just by running it over and over again and seeing what it does, you after a while you just know. So developing the skill, you have to think about, like, when you're approaching this, what skills do you want to develop intentionally? And I would say it's better to intentionally develop the skill of good debugging than it is to intentionally develop the skill of, like, correct code analysis by eye. And I think when you're starting, it's easy to think, oh, well, I want to be able to correctly analyze my code by eye and validate my code by eye. And like I said, that's not a bad thing to do. I mean, I can do that to some extent, but I get it wrong sometimes, but it's sort of less important than having good skills around, like, how can I verify this? How can I see what's going on? That's good debugging, right? Like, you're being curious and you're getting feedback. You're asking you're running your code and getting output and seeing what it's actually going to do. And you just discover empirically, just through experience, what it's going to do, and it kind of becomes second nature. So that's where the, like, being able to read your code correctly kind of comes from. So I mentioned that because I've encountered a lot of people that I think, maybe not everybody would describe it this way, but I think a lot of people have an attitude similar to, like, oh, well, if I run it, then I'm cheating, or if I run it, then I'm, like, robbing myself of the opportunity to think about it. And I'm not really sold on that way of thinking because, like I said, I don't think that that's how you develop the ability to think about your code. I think the way you develop it is you just run your code a whole lot, and then you just know. After a while, you just know because you've seen every way that it can fail. I haven't gotten an error that I haven't seen before. I don't remember the last time I got an error that I hadn't seen before. Um, my goal when I go learn a new language is to get to that point as soon as I can. And the way I get there is by being curious and just, like, obsessively running my code in circumstances where I know it's going to fail, just because I want to learn the errors, because I find them valuable. I find them very useful in helping me produce working solutions, helping me produce code. So I always want to get that, like, short turnaround time. Like, I get an error and I see a new error that I haven't seen before and say, okay, well, what's the procedure for this error? And it can be easy when you're a beginner to think, oh, well, I have to have a procedure for every error. It's not as big of a deal as it sounds. It's not like there's a ton of memorization or something. It's more like you read, you note that you got a type error, you figure out what you do, and then next time you get a type error, you think, well, what did I do last time I got a type error? Maybe you remember, maybe you don't. Maybe, if you don't get that error again for another 3 months, then probably wasn't important to remember. But if you get that error all the time, then you'll get a sense of, oh, this is an error I get all the time. I know what to do with it, So you just kind of let that process unfold naturally. So all that to say, as you're approaching learning, don't be afraid to just run your code. Worst that's going to happen is you're going to get an error. And if you really don't want me to tell anybody, I won't tell anybody that you got an error. Cool. Errors are like a form of echolocation. Totally. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard me. That's funny. There's an analogy that I give sometimes. I'm not sure if you've heard me give this analogy, but it's kind of like, you think about it like when you're coding, you're kind of feeling around in the dark, and um, when you get an error, it's kind of like you feel a boundary. It's kind of like reaching out and trying to, like, feel a boundary in a room that you're in or something, or feel like a tear or a piece of furniture or something. So not getting an error or not printing is just kind of like, well, I'm just going to walk through this dark room without the aid of like putting my hands out in front of me, because to do so would rob me of the opportunity of walking through this dark room correctly in a completely intuitive manner, which seems like quite the feat, honestly. um, anyways, I have a tools question. Um, is there any easy way to copy output from the VS Code terminal? Right clicking de-highlights the output I'm trying to copy, and Control C doesn't work. I don't. I hadn't heard of. Okay, yeah. I'm not sure what operating system you're on. It's the shortcut to copy from the terminal is operating system specific. I'm on Linux, so it's probably not going to be the same for you. I know on Mac, it sounds like you're on Windows actually, because you're using Control C. Uh, you might try Control Shift C to copy. So in a terminal context, um, Control C generally isn't isn't a shortcut for copy, it's a shortcut for cancel, which means to stop a process. So it's an old, and the terminal interface obviously predates the graphical interface. Um, and Control C existed as a shortcut for cancel in like the 80s, and it's a holdover from that. So in a terminal context, in most terminals, in most contexts, it's going to be cancel, which means it's going to end a program. It's going to stop whatever process is running in there. It'll stop it and just bump you back out to the main shell, which is what you're looking at when you just start a new terminal and there's no program running or whatever. So Control C isn't going to do it for you. So for me to copy from my terminal here, if I want to copy this text, I'll just select it in the normal way, and then I hit Control Shift and C, and that'll copy. And then when I get into here, it's just Control V to paste it. Oh, Control Shift C worked. Cool. Good. Evidently, those are the same on Linux and Windows then. If you're on a Mac, it should be Command Shift. Well, depends on which terminal you use. I forget if the VS Code terminal in Mac. If you have problems with it, try Command Shift C. I guess that's the best I can say. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good question. So, I guess I feel like I've probably gone over print ad nauseum to the point where nobody wants to hear me talk about print anymore. So let's move on. So what will the result of this code snippet be? So we have x equals 3, and then we do some operations with x. None of these change the value of x. These just perform an operation. Um, it just essentially is going to produce, this is going to produce whatever 3 times 12 is 36. And then this is going to produce negative, what, 11? Something? And then it's just going to produce those values, and we're not even going to do anything with them. It doesn't capture them and save them in a variable. It doesn't change the value of x. It doesn't do anything. It just performs those operations. Oops, I realize, sorry, this is probably really small text. Maybe that's a little better. So it's just going to perform those calculations. I keep saying operations, and that might make you think that it's going to change something, but it's going to perform those calculations, and then that's it. It just does the calculating, and it doesn't do anything with the result of that calculation. So this is kind of silly code, but we print x, we're going to get 3, because that's what it said it was. Let's check the answer. So that's correct. Yay. Okay. What will this code snippet print in the console? So it'll print the value of y. The last known value of y was 25. And then let's say y equals 5. This is going to print y times 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So it'll print 25 and then 25. What will this code snippet print to the console? So this one does change the value of z. So z equals 21. Z plus 3 is 24. Z equals 24. 24 over 8 is, what is that? 3? Yeah. So that's going to be 3. So 24 over 8 is 3. Z equals 3. And then print z. So that'll be 3. And this will perform a few more changes to z, but we want to know what it printed, what the value was when we called the print, and we can just do that there. Oh, of course, and it's going to be 3.0. This one got me good. That single slash division, even though z and 8, up to this point, z is an integer, and 8 is also, of course, an integer. The single slash division is always going to produce a floating point value, even if that value could be represented as an integer. Got me fair and square. All right, which one is this one? What is this? Indentation. Cool. We got another question. Can you import modules even if you named them with a space? Named them with a space. You mean like if the file has a space in it? No. I don't think you can. I think you've now lost the ability to import it as a module. If you, I would follow snake casing convention with your file names. If there's, and let me be clear about this, if there's a way to do it, I'm not even curious to find out because the best practice is to name your files with snake case convention and to not use spaces. Maybe somebody knows how to do that, but you shouldn't. You should just use snake casing in your file names. It's a good question though. It's a fair enough question. I want to see what the heck this is. Let me see. Oh, I gotta zoom out, I think, to get. Is this just not? Oh, I see. I see. I'm like, what is happening here? So indentation. Sorry about that. Indentation. So some languages use specific symbols to denote the end of a block of code. For example, Java, almost every other language that I know uses curly brackets to enclose code blocks, and semicolons to denote the end of a statement. Python, by contrast, did not use either of these conventions. The end of a statement in Python is simply the end of the line. So when we end a line by going to the next line, that is that is the new line character is the end of line character, um, literally. So you don't have explicit line endings. You don't have explicit. Uh, well, it's kind of funny because you do actually have explicit line endings and explicit block closures. It's just that they're not visible. they're they're quote unquote invisible characters. It's still explicit. There's still characters associated with it. It's just they're not. They have nothing gets drawn to the screen for those characters. So a new line is a character, right? These are new line characters. What I'm entering right now by hitting the enter key are new line characters. But they don't, they don't draw anything on the screen like these characters do. Um, so white space is syntactically, semantically significant in Python, whereas in a lot of other languages, white space more or less can be ignored. Um, in some cases, doesn't matter at all. So your code can be, you can write a whole JavaScript program, something that you should put on, 1,000 lines of code. You could minimize it into one line of code if you wanted. It's not, obviously, it would not be nice to work on that monstrously huge line of code, but you could do it. Python, you can't do that because it's formatted with white space. So those line ending characters are new lines and they're important. And then indentation is important. And when I say important, it's visually important. It's important for the sake of readability, but it's also important to the interpreter. The interpreter will not be able to correctly parse and execute your code if your white space formatting is incorrect. So this is an example. Obviously, we're pretty early in the beginning of the material, but I'm presuming everybody at least has some familiarity up to this point. So we've got our function definition here, and I'll just actually just copy this whole thing. We've got our function definition here, and if I unindented it like this, you can see my syntax highlighting gets messed up. This is not going to work because we have to have, under this function head, we have to have something indented. Python insists that we have something indented under there. If I don't have anything to put under there at the moment, I could put a pass. But if I just put this code and I wanted this code to be part of the function, it's not going to be clear that that's part of the function. I have to move it over underneath it like that, inside of it. And then same thing here. If I oops, dang it. If I unindented these, then Python wouldn't know what code was meant to be executed if these conditions were found to be true. So we have to obey those indentationals. And if you're thinking about like, oh, well, I got to remember where all the places that I require an indentation, there's not that many places. It's just that there's just a few things that require an indentation, but they come up all the time. So any loop, while loop or a for loop, is going to require indentation. The code indented is the code that you're executing inside the loop. A function or a class is going to require indented code. A condition, if else, it's going to require indented code. Try except, those are some error handling features. That's going to require indented code. Once you get into like file IO stuff, using with open, that's going to require indented code, right? There's a few more things, but even some of those things that I mentioned are not even, we're not even discussing those in premium prep, and they're not even tested for in the technical interview, right? So there's not that many. Basically, just think about it like functions, conditions, and loops for now. Those are the things that you're going to be using all the time that are going to require indentation underneath them. After you outgrow the premium prep material, or our prep material, and grow into more advanced Python, you'll learn about classes, which are kind of related to functions. There's a similarity there. There's some overlap. They will require indentation, and then there's some other features. But the simpler rule is anything that ends in a colon, any line that ends in a colon, the next line has to be indented underneath it. Cool. All right. Is this the... Oops. Let's see. What did I do? Oh, I must have moved on with this one. Okay. So let's check this out. Will this code run, or will it result in an error? So I see, I definitely see an issue with this. If we look at this, right, like these two look like they're roughly on the same indentation level, but if I look at this E, I can see it's in line with the F, not the I. So we have an uneven indent, right? And Python is fairly relaxed about the indentation. I kind of, there's some ways that I think it could maybe even be a little more strict, but it is what it is. So if I do def my function, take an A and B, and oops, and if I say, I could indent it like print hello, and then I could say if A greater than B, right? So this is a one space indent. Let's do this. If A greater than B. So this is a one space indent, and this is valid. This is valid Python, but it's not really good. It's better to do a four space indent. It's convention to do a four space indent. I do talk a lot about leaving things up to you in terms of style. Just choose whatever you want. Just be consistent. And I know Replit defaults to a two space indent. I really don't like that it does that though. This is one thing that I think really, you can choose whatever stylistic thing that you want, but if you're using Replit, it's pretty easy to go into settings, and there's an option that says indent size, and change it from 2 to 4 spaces. Make sure the indent type is on spaces, not tabs. But the reason for that is if you want to like copy paste somebody else's code, if you, my code for example, or any of our code from Galvanize uses 4 space indentation. And if you want to like run it with your 2 space indented code and like mesh them together, it's going to cause a conflict. It's weird. You can't mix and match. You can't be inconsistent about your white space much. There's some ways that you can get away with it here or there, right? Like this is a 4 space indent. I could be inconsistent and do a 1 or a 2 or a 3 space, or I don't know, like an 11 space indent here, and that would be valid. Although this code is now thoroughly horrific, So yeah, I feel comfortable in my conviction in saying that don't you can make a lot of stylistic choices, but just don't not around indentation size. Just just leave it at the standard 4, because it is something that can cause weird issues if you try to like combine it with other code in the same document. Now that being said, I am aware that there are, you know, companies and things and Python standards that, you know, local to a specific project do deviate from that rule, and you know, that is what it is, but it's not a choice that I would make. Okay. So this one will cause a problem because this indentation and this indentation are not on the same level. And what Python is going to see is it's going to see this one as indented, and it's going to see this one as unindented. But it's also not unindented on the level that this is unindented onto. And the same thing with this here. So I don't know if this is indented too little, or if this first line and last line are indented too much, but either way, it's going to give us a syntax error. No, it won't give us a syntax error? You're kidding me. I gotta see it for myself. Oh, it's an indentation error, not a syntax error. Will this code run, or will it result in an error? Oh my gosh, I just read these answers completely backwards. Oh yeah. So no, this code will result in an error. I thought this was saying yes, this code will give a syntax error. And I was like, well, I thought it'd be an indentation error, but whatever. That was just because I didn't read the answers. Okay. Will this code run, or will it result in an error? So everything's aligned, right? Like there's this kind of nice square alignment. We have this clean alignment of things right here. But this else is indented under this if, and it doesn't have an if preceding it that is parallel to it. There is a line pretty close above it that starts with if, but it's not parallel to it. So that's going to be one kind of error, which is that we can't start a chain of conditions with an else. It has to start with an if and be preceded by elifs or elses, or an else. So that's one problem. The other problem is, or that's one way of looking at this problem. The other way of looking at this problem is that this else is indented too far, right? This else should be unindented. It should be dedented back to the furthest left position in parallel with this if up here. So no, this code will result in an error. And then let's look at this code. So will this code give us syntax error? So let's see, we have this if x is greater than 5, then we're going to print this and check this condition. If x is less than 15, then we're going to print that. So these are in parallel. This is nicely indented. And then we have this if followed by that else. That's fine, and that's indented. And it's indented to the same level of it as everything else from this if, so everything's all squared away. So that code is good to go. Cool. All right, looks like we got another question here. Looks like the person did figure it out, but I just wanted to chime in on this. So the question is, does the import keyword typically see files that share a folder with your Python code? So import, let me check. Let's look at this really quick and see if I can open this. Okay, so I've got I don't usually use this project window on the left here, but I've got this project open here, and this is just a my Python folder that I use for just like random stuff, just if I need to do a quick experiment or take notes or stream or whatever. Then I put all my code in here. So you can see I've got a lib.py, main, mod, notes, test, text. I've got just a few kind of random files in here just to play around with. So notes is my notes document, and I talked about that when we talked about comments. This is where I just keep all my bulk notes of everything that I go over. Main is the file that's executed, and that's a convention, right? So if we look at this command that I use to execute my code, we've got this, you can ignore this first part because it's a file watcher that I use to like watch and reload the whole directory when something changes. The thing that's actually running the code and executing my Python code is saying ipython3 main.py, and what that's saying is use the ipython3 interpreter to execute the file called main.py, right? So this is main.py. This is all that I have in main.py, and I don't even need this stuff because I've got this in here. It's not even important. So here's main.py, and all you can see is I've got this if dunder name equals dunder main. This just means execute this code if this is the file being targeted by the interpreter, which it always is. It's kind of silly that that's the way it is, but this is a convention. There's a convention around having a file that's your entry point into your program called main, and then in that file doing all your imports or whatever, and then you have all your main code, in this case I just literally have an import. It's more conventional to have your imports outside, but I literally don't have any code that I want to run in main other than that. I guess I could run this this new line. Why don't I do that? But yeah, and I'm running these imports in my main function here, and these are importing my other py files. So the way that your import is going to work is it's not just going to go find any other file. If I want to pull in test.txt, this is not a Python file, this is a text file, so I've got to do like, we're running short on time, otherwise I'd go into file IO stuff. But if you want to look into with, W-I-T-H, let me try that again, W-I-T-H, with open, so there's a keyword called with, and then open, and then you can give it a file name, and that's how you'll typically work with other files of other types. And it's a totally different way of thinking about it than with import. So what import does is, in a simple format, if I just use import and then a name after it, it's going to look for a Python file, in other words, a file that ends in .py with this name without the .py, right? So if I say import lib, what this is saying is, what this is doing without explicitly saying is look in this directory, find a py file called lib.py, right? So all of these are just assumed and import lib. That it's assumed that whatever you're importing is a Python file, that it doesn't have spaces in the file name. Like I said, if there is a way to make that work, I don't know about it. But what you're supposed to do is just use snake case in the file names if you need to. And to look in this directory. There are ways of importing something that's in a parallel or a parent directory or in a nested directory. There are ways of kind of doing some file navigation with this. But just to keep it simple, if you keep all your documents in the same directory for now, you can just import the file name without the extension, and that should work fine. Okay, cool. So that puts us right about at time. Maybe I will, it just occurred to me, maybe I should talk about file I/O. That's actually kind of a fun topic, and you can kind of get into importing text from other files and playing around with it, which can be a really cool way to work. There's a lot of cool things you can do. I mean, you can start just like parsing files on your computer, just crawling around your file system and finding files to parse and try not to destroy them, or try to destroy them safely, right? You don't want to mess up files that you need, obviously, but you could mess around with files that are in the same directory. But yeah, maybe I'll work up a special study hall for that. Let me know if that would be something that would be interesting to you all to work on file I/O stuff. DM me if that's an interesting prospect, and maybe I'll work up something like that. Yeah, cool. I'll wrap it up there. It was a good study hall today. I appreciate the interaction and the questions today. I hope everybody got to ask a question if they wanted to. Thanks to everybody who did and who interacted, and even if you just wanted to hang out and watch, that's cool too. I can appreciate that. I'll be leading I'll be leading Premium Prep tonight. We'll be going over dictionaries and the remaining sort of major data types in Python, sets and tuples as well. And then Tovio will be leading the rest of the week. And I'll be teaching on Saturday, and then Tovio will take all of the last week. And I'll be there for the final Monday of this cohort. But I'll be around on Slack, so you'll see less of me in Premium Prep after tonight in general. But do feel free to hit me up on Slack. I've got a lot of availability in my calendar, and I tend to book mentoring sessions towards the beginning of the day. And then I do like streaming and Premium Prep obviously later in the day, but do feel free to reach out if you need anything, if you're stuck on something. Study hall is not the only place that you're welcome to ask questions. If you want to ask questions of your peers, you can ask in basic prep, or if you're in a Premium Prep cohort, you can ask in the Premium Prep channel in whichever cohort you're in. If you want my ear directly, send me a DM. Sometimes it can take me a little bit longer to get back to you, but I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to work out mentoring, either a one-time mentoring or a regular scheduled, maybe once a week mentoring session, I am available for that as well. So yeah, just feel free to reach out anytime. And I'll see you all around for next study hall and future Premium Preps and stuff. Cool. Bye-bye.